Welcome to what is episode 10 of 100 Years of Marine Corps Tankers, a station dedicated to honoring the legacy of Marine tankers and remembering the stories of what made the community special, told through the words of those Marines that towed the line. And today I am joined by a Marine who, although leaving active duty, has continued to serve his community by working as a firefighter and has kept the Marine Corps honor clean through a multitude of volunteer services. Welcome to 100 Years of Marine Corps Tankers, Sergeant Freddie Escobar.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon.
Happy to have you, brother. Hey, so we're gonna start back kind of when it all kind of began. So 4th of December, 1982, you were born in Los Angeles, California, and then all the way back to 2003, you decided to enlist in the Marine Corps. What made you kind of make that decision?
So in 2003, obviously that's post 9/11. Okay. So I was a little bit older. I was 20, and I was watching the towers fall. And I specifically, like anyone else, remembers what they were doing during that time, and just watching those towers fall, like I mentioned previously. Mm-hmm. But I had a calling to serve. I've always wanted to do it. My stepfather was a Marine. My twin brother wanted to be a Marine. I wanted to be a Marine, and that was kind of the last push. So shortly after that, my twin brother and I enlisted, and we awaited going to MCRD San Diego.
Excellent. Where's your twin brother now?
So my twin brother, unfortunately, he passed away in 2009.
I'm sorry to hear that. There was a story that you kind of were mentioning to me off the air that I certainly kind of want to get on here. So what do you got about Randy Phillips?
Randy Phillips, man. He's a gunner sergeant now. He's our platoon sergeant, and my identical twin brother had come up to visit. So he was stationed with 1-1 in San Diego. And he came up to Point and Palms to visit, right? So he's a sergeant. I'm a corporal at the time. He goes up to Gunner Sergeant Phillips, and he was like, pretending he was me, right? So Gunny Phillips looks at him, then looks at his rank, then looks at him again, just slaps him right in the nuts. I mean, just drops him to his knees, right? Just dropped him, man. And he was like, Escobar, stop fucking around, and then just nut checks him. So I come around the side of the tank, and I'm like busting up, and our twin brother's looking at me like, you asshole, So Randy Phillips looks at both of us, and he's like, what the hell? There's two of you?
Nah, it's good stuff, man. How many more Marines you guys get, or did the story get out because everything spreads like wildfire in the Marine Corps?
One of my drill instructors were both recruits, right? And I'm in line to get a haircut, and my brother is walking by. So the drill instructor starts yelling at him like, Escobar, where the F do you think you're going? And he's getting in his face and spitting at him and everything else. And my brother's stopping, and he's trying to say, this recruit is not, this recruit. And the drill instructor is just going at him. So then he says, my brother's over there, sir, and he points my way, right? So my drill instructor brings my brother over to me, and then he makes my brother scream in my face, and I have spit coming down and stuff. And he's telling me what a turd I am because I'm like in first phase and he's in third phase, And it was
that's good.
I love those stories, man. It's just so funny.
Awesome. So upon MCT, like you mentioned, went to Fort Knox where you attained the MOS of 1812. M1A1 crewman. And then in 2003, you were assigned the 1st Tank Battalion out in beautiful 29 Palms, California. So when you think of Marine Corps tankers, obviously, with the divestment this year and the reason why we're doing this station, why we're doing this channel and trying to get this message out, everyone kind of has a different perspective this year.
Right.
And it's going to continue to remain tough for a very long time. But when you think of Marine Corps tanker, what kind of images or memories do come to your mind?
The images and memories that come to my mind they are my family. They have helped shape, guide, and just make me who I am today. And I wouldn't be who I am today if each and every one of those people did not come into my life when they did. So yeah, that's what I think about. They're my brothers, and I love them.
So you're still in touch with a lot of folks?
A lot, which is great. Not only that, but I often tell my wife, I said, you know what, anywhere you want to go, I will know someone or someone knows someone that will, give us a place to stay, or we can stop by and say hello. So it's a beautiful thing.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, it's part of a brotherhood, part of a family. It's even smaller niche. So yeah, I hear you in that point. March 2004, you deployed to Al-Qaim in Iraq in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, where you were assigned to RCT 7, and you held both the billets of tank driver and gunner. So, how did you make that jump from being a driver all the way to gunner?
I just want to touch base on how that whole thing happened. So I get out of Fort Knox in December of 2003. We end up in the field, right? And they say, "Hey, Boo, get in the driver's seat, and we're going to go out and practice formations." So we go and we practice formations. We bring it back to the company coil, and we put it in, right? Or we're putting our tank into the coil, and they tell me to shut it off, shut the tank off. Well, I automatically, this is my first time in a tank in the fleet with this new company, and it was actually Delta company. And I, like any good boot or new Marine, I turn off the power without giving it to. So it goes into protected mode. And, and I think I have every single Delta company NCO right outside that driver's hatch, and they're screaming at me and calling me everything you could think of, So later that night, I was like, where am I going to sleep? Everyone thinks I'm a loser. Like they're just, calling me out because I'm just a new guy, right? So I go and I find this small group of people in the middle of the coil. So I spent the night with the CO, the XO, the tank leader, and myself.
Nice.
Anyway, so I'm part of Delta company, and Staff Sergeant David Sprague comes around and he says, "Hey, Charlie company needs tankers, and they're pulling tankers from the battalion. Who wants to volunteer to go?" And Troy Stump and myself, we were underneath this tank, and I remember putting my little hand out and saying, I want to go. And I didn't think anything of it. I was brand new Marine. And thankfully, myself and Ryan Carroll, Thomas Wagner, and the late Benjamin Smith, Sergeant Benjamin Smith, that crew, they pulled that crew from Delta Company, and then we went over to Charlie. So yeah, I did my time as a driver, and then I bounced because the loader was a mechanic, and I bounced into a gunner's seat. So it was nice to be able to do that.
Good deal, man. Yeah, that's a nice move. That's a big jump. And then upon returning from deployment, you were promoted to tank commander. And then in 2005, you were named as the non-commissioned officer of the quarter. And I actually think I remember this. So, yeah, Sergeant Esquivel, 2005, you've kind of made it to the ranks, made it to tank commander, and then you took NCO of the quarter. So, how did that whole thing kind of come about? Who were some of the leaders that had a significant impact on those successes?
Yeah, a better question would be who weren't the leaders, right? I mean, they were rock stars, everyone. It's so funny, as I was listening to the past episodes, and, all the lineage is deep, right? And even though I didn't work with a Master Sergeant Mummy, I worked with his mentees, right? Who were then my mentors. Sergeant Cass, Sergeant Pugh, Sergeant Owens, like all these guys were just great. Even Big Country Williams. I mean, I don't know if you knew who he was, but he was just this big dude. He could barely put his flak on, but that guy could tank, man. It was just amazing. And I had a lot of good people to edge off and run against. So we were sharpening one another. It was iron sharpening iron. So I can't just name one person, but if I did, it'd probably be Sergeant Smith and at the time, and I do apologize, Staff Sergeant Randy Phillips. I mean, those guys were just awesome guys, and they put me on the right path.
No, man, I love that, steel sharpening steel, because I mean, you hear about that, but there's very few instances in the Marine Corps where you really see it, present and take fold and take shape, and the tanker community is absolutely that, because there's so many things about the vehicle, so many things about tactics and whatnot that we've kind of already discussed, but to get to the level that you were, to be able to take that NCO of the quarter, you obviously were the steel, and then in turn, we're going to get to it in a moment here when we kind of talk about your future deployments. You became that guy. So I mean, you're a living embodiment of exactly what what it means to be a staff, NCO, and ultimately what would have been a staff NCO for sure. So March of 2006, you redeployed to Al-Qaim, Iraq, in support of OIF again, Operation Iraqi Freedom, and you were assigned to the Regimental Combat Team RCT 7 and RCT 8. And then while you were deployed as a tank gunner and commander, on 2 separate occasions, you struck an IED. And because of this action, you were personally awarded the Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal. I'm sure there's stories behind these IED strikes and kind of what how they took place and the, you know, obviously the left and the rights on that. So please.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Both times that I deployed to Charlie Company, 04 and 06, we were in the same FOB or forward operating base, and just the mission had changed as the enemy had changed and adapted their tactics to having tanks in country. So that second time around, we were actually patrolling up and down the main service road, and RCT-7, the regimental combat team, was setting up outposts, and they had a variety of them just strung out along the main service road. And we provided a lot of overwatch, convoy security and whatnot. That particular evening, we were providing overwatch and we were getting hit with mortars and whatnot. And we had to go back to the main base to refit. Mm-hmm. So we start to push, we start our convoy back, and it's just a section. We were the 3 at the time. Staff Sergeant Efren Alanis was my tank commander. Mm. And we start heading back, and we have the lieutenant's tank with us, Lieutenant Lenz, and Sergeant Hernandez was his gunner. Anyway, so we come through, and our tank starts to go into protected mode, and then it's kind of just limping along, and I mean, it's just limping. Mm. Barely going 5 miles per hour, if that. We're just kind of just going. And the lieutenant says, "Hey, why don't you guys push in front of us and we'll just pace off of you." Mm. When that happened, you know, as any good gunner, you're kind of traversing it and ensuring that you're sweeping the whole road and off to the right and the left side of it and whatnot. And there's just this funky feeling in the air. Tank hits improvised explosive device. All the shrapnel and debris from the tank behind us just pops forward, and we're a good 50 meters, 50 yards in front of the tank. And it blocked out my gunner's primary sight and everything else. And we went back, and it was just this big crater, you know. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, we did lose a Marine during that. But it's the one time when, as a leader, I kind of lost it, right? Everything that you put into these Marines and what you want from them is for them to come home. Right. With all, you know, with everything that they went with, you would like them to come back home. Right. And unfortunately, we didn't get that. And I remember Lance Corporal at the time, Andy Rogers, looked at me and he said, "Hey man, calm the fuck down. Let's just do this." And it didn't not click to me until after the fact, where I was like, man, like, losing a junior Marine is one of the hardest things that any leader can experience. You see adversity and how people react from that. So it was just one of those things. Anyway, we go in, I want to respect the family, so I won't say what we went in and did, but we were recovering the tank, and it was like a 17-hour ordeal. Mm-hmm. So we get back on our tank, we go up to the next outpost, and as luck would have it, and I'll kind of tie this up in another story, but this guy, Michael Clark, comes out, and he's a staff sergeant with RCT-7, and he's the one that's tasked with recovering that vehicle, and he plays a huge role in my life later on. Anyhow, so that was one event. The second event, once again, we're providing overwatch. We come around this bend. First tank goes through, nothing happens. Well, we come through, and obviously we get hit, and it's right underneath the driver's hole. And it's amazing to me how much that armor can take. You know, we lost comm and what have you. My driver was Blake Amasquita, so I'm calling down to him. Tank commander, once again, Staff Sergeant Efren Alanis, is asking, like, "Hey, is everyone all right? We want to set up a situation report and kind of let everyone know what's going on." So, yeah, the recovery process was pretty, I don't want to say smooth. So it was easier to deal with just because you had gone through it before. So you kind of knew, hey, we need to make sure everyone's accounted for, see what's going on in the vehicle. Are we all okay? And then we'll roger up, or we'll let the other section or the other tank know that we're okay.
Right.
So yeah, there's some growth there as the enemy was evolving, as we were as well.
No, that's a great point. And yeah, certainly my heart goes out to the family. I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to mention their name either, but for those of us that know, that was a very, very tough time. And yeah, I wasn't aware that you were directly involved in that. And then, like you mentioned, that first one was always tough. Your tactics change and your techniques change. And like you said, you evolve. And that's a great point. And that's something that, at the schoolhouse, I think they tried to kind of teach that in a lot of the Marines coming through that had never been in that situation. It's kind of hard to pass that on. It's one of those things that lesson's a hard lesson to learn because you kind of have to almost learn it and under those stress. And, you mentioned it, that you lost it as a leader. I mean, that's completely understandable. I mean, it's you were put in that position as a sergeant and as a tank commander, and, do not in the slightest beat yourself up about it, because you did exactly what you needed to do.
Right. And, and that was the first and last time. And you have a valid point there. The only way to experience that is to learn. Mm-hmm. We lost Sergeant Smith the first time around in 2004. And seeing the way that Gunner Sergeant Bankus and Staff Sergeant Phillips at the time handled that whole situation with Lieutenant Butts and the company staff was just amazing. Mm-hmm. As a junior Marine to witness, and then having to experience it the next deployment was, it kind of came full circle for the maturity piece, right? Mm-hmm. As an individual, it just built character, I feel like.
No, those are all really great points. What other memories do you have when you think of these deployments?
You know what's funny? It's so funny. I was laughing when Gunner Sergeant Popovich was talking about how he was hooking and jabbing and he was going to miss. He thought he was going to miss deployments because he was on the drill field and what have you. What he won't tell you is that first deployment when they were gathering up tank crews from the battalion, he was another one of those. We saw him get promoted to gunner sergeant before we deployed. Right. And this is not a funny story. This is kind of that guy's he is solid, man. Gunner Sergeant Popovich is solid. I remember just being a young Lance Corporal, and we had these berthing areas in Kuwait, right, before we crossed the LOD, or the line of departure, into Iraq. And he slept with his whole crew, with his whole platoon, and then his crew alongside of him, where, usually you have a staff NCO berthing, and they kind of go up. He slept with his Marines, and that was something that I've always remembered, him having done that. But a funny story, we were in Iraq and I'm out there, and this is one of my first missions as a tank commander, right? And we're rolling around, and Brandon Regan is my gunner, and Blake Amasquita is my driver. And I was like, hey man, keep rolling. We're going to go set up a quick observation post. Just keep going forward. And Regan says, oh, well, I don't see anything. I don't think we could go any further. And I said, oh, it looks like, tall grass or whatever, like grain growing. I was like, just keep going. Well, it wasn't. We were coming off of a hill, and we slid that tank. I mean, just curved it, right? And we all through track. And I just remember looking over because Staff Sergeant Alanis at the time, he was, he was observing me as a tank commander, and he was just holding on to the loader's hatch and the loader's ring for dear life. It was probably like a 10-foot embankment. You have to punt these into the stands every now and again, right? It was my first time going out, and Regan, he said, hey, I don't think it's tall grass, like we shouldn't go. And I was like, just go, man. And like a good Marine, we went, and yeah.
Next thing you know, you're going 45-degree angle. Nah, it's good stuff.
They're going to love that story because they'll remember it. But yeah.
Okay, so I already mentioned the drill field. 2007, you did yourself go to the drill field as part of DI School Class 3 TAC 07. And then you were assigned to 1st Battalion Alpha Company as a drill instructor And then later, you continued as a drill instructor, working through the routing platoon sergeant billet, and then the senior drill instructor billet until September 2009. So it's a pretty robust tour in the was it the island or was it San Diego?
In San Diego.
San Diego. Okay. So yeah, that's a pretty robust tour.
Yeah, unfortunately, it did not come out in my favor. I was a young and hungry sergeant. I was a young and hungry drill instructor. And once again, Gunshot and Popovich hit it. You can run at 55 miles per hour as long as you're within the standing operating procedures of recruit training.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get outside those lines, good, bad, or indifferent, you're going to get slammed. I learned that the hard way. I met a lot of great people there. There were, when I first showed up, I was like, man, there aren't really tankers out here. Most tankers go out to the schoolhouse, they go back to Fort Knox, or they go to Master Gunnery School, and then they go to 4th Tanks or reserve units.
Mm-hmm.
There weren't other tankers on the drill field when I was there. I think the exception was one, Staff Sergeant Lemus, right. Was maybe one. And I do apologize because I'm going to refer to them at the rank that when we were serving.
No, you're fine. You're fine. Yeah.
With one. So we go out there, and man, you know what? Tankers, I wish more tank crewmen would go out to become drill instructors because we are bred for that. Right. You have a 3 to 4 hat team or 3 to 4 drill instructors on one team, and you just work hand in hand. You know what you're supposed to do. And those first couple of cycles when I was there, they beat me up, man. I'm a small guy, but I went down to like 110 pounds and just working constantly. Right. But just to tie that up, when I became a senior drill instructor, I said, I'm not going to treat people the way that I got treated. Good, bad, or indifferent, I just did not like it, Mm-hmm. And Michael Clark, the gentleman who was helping us in 2006 retrieve that tank that when we lost the Marine, mm-hmm. He came to become a drill instructor in my company and was under my charge. And he would do some things, and I was like, hey, drill instructor, go get some rest, man, or go get some sleep. I got this. Just go away. Don't forget to eat. Don't forget to call your family. Don't forget to do these things that were not provided to us when we were going through, when we were younger guys. And I was just out for his retirement in Utah a few weeks ago, and he actually mentioned what I had done for him. And it was just one of those things we talked about earlier. Your leaders, they help make you who you are later in life. And when I was able to make a change, I did. So it was a good time. Anyway, adversity. At the end of my drill instructor tour, I failed to do something that I was supposed to do, and I got slammed for it. Took full responsibility for my actions, and you keep on moving. I just don't see any other way out. So it was a good tour though, and I gained a lot of leadership experience from it. So yeah. No,
it's great, man. And I just read something the other day that says, I never lose. I either win or I learn. And I think that's pretty good advice. And that's probably the advice that even though you may not have been conscious you were doing it, I think probably that's exactly what happened, because you back 2010 in February, you were deployed to Al Helman in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, OEF, once again assigned to RCT-7. You liked RCT-7. And then you deployed with those guys as a squad leader, vehicle commander for over 100 missions. I mean, that's 100 combat missions. That's a pretty resounding number. And then you were assigned to run all operations to the entry control points, for which the average traffic of the vehicle was 200 vehicles. And then you saw over 800 local nationals per day. So, as Sergeant of the Guard, those duties really kind of meant something. And let's hear a little bit about your thoughts going back to that time.
This time period for me was just a doozy, and I'll just give you some of my personal. We talked to my identical twin brother. Him and we joined the Marine Corps together. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2009 due to a drunk driver. So I go from losing my identical twin brother, in July of 2009 to being relieved for cause from the drill field 6 weeks later. And then about 8 weeks after that, I give Master Arnold a call, and I said, hey, Master Arnold, I was thinking of going to 2nd Tanks. Unfortunately, I've had this happen in my life. I think it'd be better if I stayed on the West Coast so I could be around my family during this time. Mash Arnold pops orders. 30 minutes later, I receive orders, and they've been changed to 29 Palms. So now I show up once again. I left a sergeant, should be a staff sergeant. I show up a corporal back to the same company, and Captain Butts now, who was my first platoon commander, calls me into his office, and he says, "Hey," and I love Jacob Butts. I mean, he is just what he's done for myself and others is a great thing. I love that guy for giving me a chance. And he called me into his office and he said, "Hey, I know you have a lot of stuff going on, but I need you for this deployment. We're going in as an improvised infantry platoon. We're going to do route clearance. We're going to do a lot of other odds and ends job that tank crewmen normally do not do." "Very well, sir. You know, of course, I'll be glad to come here." So we do. But that company was interesting because the platoon was made up of TOWs and scouts, and then tankers and mechanics were kind of just drilled into their squads, you know.
Right.
And because of my experience, I was able to take one of those platoon sergeants roles, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, these TOWs and scout guys were amazing. Michael Gilio, Justin Bounds, Daniel Holback, Neil Steinmetz. I mean, these guys were some of the smartest, tactically sound individuals. And I think we don't give them enough credit. Tank crewmen do not, because
Mm-hmm.
we don't work with them often. I know platoon commanders can go off and they're TOWs and scouts commanders and what have you, but tank crewmen normally do not work hand in hand with them. And they were some of the best Marines, or they are some of the best Marines I have ever met. So yeah, it was an interesting thing. But when you hear 100 missions and all this other stuff go on, that's a job that's done together. There is a lot of learning, a lot of give and take. And once again, tank crewmen are able to adapt and overcome adversity. And it was a great, great deployment.
So speaking of overcoming diversity during that deployment, you failed to mention the fact that you were struck pretty impactfully with a improvised explosive device that was underneath your seat, and then subsequently, obviously, you were awarded the Purple Heart and once again a personal award, Navy Marine Corps Achievement Medal for your injuries, leadership, and accomplishments during that combat tour. So, do you have any thoughts from that particular incident?
Yeah, so this is one of the last route clearance missions that we had. And we were actually just doing one more and we're going to come in. So we'd go out for a few days, set overnight, clear a route, and then do it again in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
and what have you. So this was in the morning. We are the third vehicle back. So we have two in front and one behind us. There are 5 of us. And what they were doing, and when I say the insurgents were doing, they were putting 2x4s and then putting the trigger device in between that.
Mm-hmm.
So first 2 vehicles roll over, nothing happens. Our MRAP goes over and it detonates right underneath my seat. All I remember is hitting the top of the MRAP or the top of the vehicle and then just being slammed back down. Mm-hmm. I look around, we lost comm, right? And this is where I say things come back full circle.
Right.
Took a breath. I look around. Justin Bounds is my gunner. He's up on top of the turret with a Mark 19. And this guy, you know, he's probably 6'4", 6'5", and like a size 14 boot. And thankfully, he did have a big boot because his toe caught the Mark 19, and that prevented him from being ejected out of that vehicle.
Wow.
Refke, Greg was my driver. I saw his face slam into the steering wheel. I look behind us. We have the corpsman, Eddie Guzman's in the back, Doc Guzman's in the back, and Christopher Dreher's in the back as well. So, you know, I kind of look around. I say, "Hey, how's everyone doing?" Justin, you know, he's all fucked up because he was partially ejected out of the vehicle.
Right.
So Doc Guzman's tending to him, and I'm trying to bring up communications via radio. Obviously, that's not going to work. Thankfully, we had a Blue Force tracker in there, and I had the foresight to kind of just go to that, right? The next echelon of communications, and that was the Blue Force tracker. I had scripted or had already filed situation reports and after action or whatever. Anyway, so I go in there and I write a quick situation report. Sir, this is truck 3. This is what's going on. You can come in from the east side or whatever, and that's where we'll meet you. We have 2 injured, and that type of language was in that transmission. And the rest of the platoon came up and met us and everything else. But anyway, yeah, it's funny to me, and I say it's funny. It's awesome to think of how leadership comes back to you. Like, you train to be ready, so when that moment comes, you're in it, you're doing it. So it was a great test of what I had been through and what other people have poured into me. So it was good to kind of see that outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's like we said before. I mean, I mentioned steel sharpening steel. I think you mentioned it, and I echoed it. Obviously at that point you became the sharpening of the steel, because just the forethought to say, okay, calms down, where do I go? That's something that, we do train a little bit, we do touch on, but that's not something that in the heat of the moment, you instantaneously kind of think about, but you did, because obviously you'd already gone through that scenario as an NCO that's doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing and wargaming it. And that just speaks to you as a person and your ability to think critically, your ability to think under, severe duress. All right, check it out. And I'm sure that report was exactly what that the leadership needed to be able to go, all right, east side is good. I know how many casualties there are, because at that point you probably triggered the 9 line. So the time that would have taken to get the information out, assess the vehicle, go back to the vehicle, check the casualties. Okay, what do we got? All that time is all time that you personally saved for those Marines that were injured, just simply by saying, hey, we got 2 casualties and this is what's going on. I mean, that is varsity level stuff, and kudos to you, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, that's the way it played out. So it was great. Once again, it was good to see training just kick in, and it was just a natural thing. So.
Absolutely. And then post that, probably related to this whole thing, 2010, you were named Tanker of the Year for Charlie Company, 1st Tank Battalion.
Oh my gosh, I was excited. Because I sat in the timeout box, right, as a corporal for 12 months, and I'm rocking and rolling, and I have this high score to get promoted to sergeant once again. And as soon as I'm out of the penalty box, I've served my time, the MOS is closed, right? They're not promoting anyone.
Of course.
And I'm 100 points beyond what I'm supposed to be. I'm exceeding the score. And then I was promoted and received Tanker of the Year for that year on the same date, November 1st, 2010. So I was just, man, if hard work pays off, and that all happened at once. My wife was there. Lance Corporal, he was a sergeant at Mosquito, then pinned me. Captain Berletti, who was a lieutenant back when we deployed in 06, was the commanding officer. So it was just a lot of good things happened. And I was, I was overwhelmed with just joy. Like, man, it happened. You know what I mean?
Lightning struck twice forward. Because 2 years later, you were Tanker of the Year for Delta Company. So, but almost damn near back-to-back Tanker of the Year for 2 different companies. It sounds to me like you were a man on a vengeance, because you paid your time in the penalty box, like you said, and you came out of it, and you were ready to hit the ice pretty hard, my friend. So yeah, I mean, back-to-back, for Charlie and Delta, that's pretty resounding.
Yeah, thank you. I was working hard for it, for sure.
Awesome. And then you turned your attention to attaining an associate's degree with American Military University with a focus in general studies. But you kind of put that on pause for a moment, because once again, you deployed in January 2013 to once again Helmand Province in Afghanistan, part of OEF, Operation Enduring Freedom. Once again, RCT 7, and you were deployed as a tank commander this time for a section leader for 30 combat missions. And then you were also kind of dual hatting as you were a ninja for the McMapp Marine Corps Martial Arts Program, where you awarded 46 gray belts, 36 green belts, 32 brown belts, and 24 black belts. That is pretty phenomenal in a deployment turn. I mean, you must have been a pretty busy man.
Yes.
Yes.
Funny story, rolling it. I'm sorry. I'm trying to gather my thoughts here. Delta Company. It was an interesting time. They had so many tank crews. I think we went out to gunnery and you shot, I don't know, 16 crews one day or something. Mm-hmm. It was just something crazy. And then they started to kind of, I think there was an Echo Company at the time as well. And they started shifting tank crews around and different platoons. They started formulating all these things. And I was like, oh man, I just want to go on a MEU. I've been trying to go on a MEU. I've been here for damn near 12 years. I'm trying to go on a MEU. Mm-hmm. And as luck would have it, I never went on a MEU. I was always, you know, like you're saying, with RCT-7, hooking and jabbing and going on to straight up deployments. But it was an interesting platoon. And I was talking to Staff Sergeant Tim Ugum after he did his story with you. Mm-hmm. That platoon was amazing. Because I was originally a section leader. Staff Sergeant Tim Ugum was the 4, and then Gunner Sergeant Jose Rivera came off of special duty assignment and then kind of bumped everyone down. So we were top heavy, and that's the second time that had occurred, because in 2004, Staff Sergeant Randy Phillips was our platoon sergeant, and then Johnny Bankes comes in and then kind of bumped him down. So those two platoons were identical. I mean, they were top heavy, motivated. Everyone knew their role. I mean, blindly, we can do one another's jobs. We were completing each other's transmissions over the radio. We can move. We can just gauge stuff. And it was just fluid. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't happen often. The junior Marines were amazing. They were just hard workers. We took over second tanks in Shukmani, and those guys had their asses handed to them during their deployment, and you could tell they were kind of they needed to step away, and it was an easy transition. I knew it was my last deployment. I knew that. One, service limitations was creeping up on me. I had to get promoted, or I was going to be shown the door. They infused tanks into Afghanistan. I had missed a deployment previously with Alpha Company on tanks, and now I was able to kind of make that up a year later. So that was a godsend. It was just a good thing to kind of end my career that way. I got bumped to the 3, and I was totally fine with it, because, you know, when we're working in a section, we're kind of still doing the same thing as the 2. Anyway, it was a great deployment. The McMapp stuff, I didn't do that alone. That was Eric Estrada who helped me out, who was also a trainer, really good wrestler. Gunner Sergeant Rivera as well. And what we would do is we set up our own dojo, right?
Nice.
And which was really cool. And then we would go out and advocate and say, hey, to the different units that were on base, do you have any Marines who need to be PME complete, right? I mean, you want to try to get some training in. But more than that, you wanted to show that who tanks were, so that way people were talking about you during, you know, in the operational post or whatever. Just throughout base, people were talking about, like, hey, your tanks is doing this or tanks is doing that. But it's always good to kind of patent your name or put your name with a product, right? And we're saying, hey, this is what we're offering, but we're building relationships, and that's what it's all about. And some of those relationships I still have today.
No, it's great. I mean, that's a huge leadership trait there. I mean, the ability to branch out, the ability to kind of market who we are, you know, to sell tanks. You know, I've been told that multiple times. You know, anytime I break out of the community, obviously, you know, that has now become permanent. But anytime I used to break out of the community, the one thing everyone would kind of tell me would be sell tanks, talk tanks, sell tanks, and always be closing. And that's the recruiter, you know, recruiter, right? So, you know, and I mean, that's just it, you know, having those guys on the mat, you know, being able to instruct them and teach them and work with them, you know, and then, you know, 48 hours later or 24 hours later, be out in the field with them. Hey, if tanks get a call and you know, that dude, I mean, that's not only your brother by, you know, just association in the Marine Corps, that is now your friend and your brother, because you guys just rolled around in the mat together. I mean, that's absolutely, that's a great leadership trait, and that's something that should always follow us through.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. Because there were a number of times when they're like, "Hey, tanks were out there," and I mean, you get first class service,
Right.
And you're right. So those relationships is would build a bridge just to last your whole deployment and moreover. So it's a good thing.
And then you came back, and you finished your associate's degree with Arizona State University, and you changed it to organizational leadership. And then, unfortunately, you were medically retired in 2015, but you were able to be accepted to the University of Washington School of Public Health. And the story doesn't end there, because while you were when you were graduating, following the graduation of University of Washington, you served as a public health assistant with the Naval Branch Medical Clinic in Everett, Washington. So from the very first day you kind of got out and became, a civilian, once a Marine, always a Marine, I get that. But in reality, you were working as a civilian. You were immediately kind of thrust back into volunteer service, and that doesn't stop, and I'll pause here for a moment to kind of let you chime in.
Yeah. In 2010, I had this relationship with Michael Lancaster. He was a communications guy, a sergeant. Now he's a gunnery sergeant. And we were talking at Range 500, and he said, "Hey, have you ever thought about going to school?" Well, I had tried. I tried in 2005 before my EAS was up. And it just wasn't for me at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't for me at 18 years old, 19 years old, and it wasn't for me in 2005. The getting was good in Iraq. We were seeing deployments, kind of something I wanted to do. So it was, and I actually went to school for EMT because I wanted to be a firefighter. But I stayed in the Marine Corps. Anyhow, Michael Lancaster, as luck would have it, would just reignite that passion to want to learn. I come from East Los Angeles, not a great school district or school, barely made it out of high school. And I worked my ass off to finish my associate's degree while I was still in the Marine Corps, and then transferred to Arizona State, and was halfway through my junior year. And I applied to the University of Washington, and I didn't hear anything back. I didn't hear anything back. I was like, oh, you know what? I'm not going to get into UW. It's a difficult school to get into, what have you. And my mother-in-law kept saying, "No, Freddie, you got this. Don't worry about it. You'll be fine." Well, I was transitioning from California to Washington, and I get this call one day, and it's the advisor at the University of Washington, and they said, "Hey, are you going to accept your acceptance into the University of Washington?" So I almost missed it because communication was broke down, so I almost missed it. So I was medically retired in 2015. What people did not know is that when I was injured in 2010, it compressed my lower back, which caused bilateral sciatic pain and nerve damage, urinary incontinence, and some other stuff. And when I rolled off of that 2013 deployment, I was sitting with my flak jacket on in the tank commander seat, and I just felt like this pinching in my lower back. Anyhow, I couldn't walk for 2 days after that. And my wife told me, either you go get help, or this is the end. You know what I mean? Because I don't think that you sacrificing your body is worth our future. So that's kind of where the University of Washington and school, and as luck would have it, once again, Michael Lancaster just giving me that little push, I finished. So then I get out and I said, what do I want to do? I love public health. I like looking at the community and how community involvement and how we engage with one another. And veterans, military health is in need, right? You have a mass exodus of people out of the military. We were ramping up in 2006, 7, and 8, and now we're ramping down. And I wanted to be part of that help. So that's why I joined the health team at the clinic there.
No, it's fantastic. And then, also now currently serving as a fireman, but, your volunteer service, it's just kind of endless. I mean, between Marine Corps Reserve, Toys for Tots, the American Legion, Military Order of the Purple Heart, Student Veterans of America, and then obviously, like I said, working now as a fireman. I mean, you have dedicated your life to volunteerism and really serving the community, serving those around you. I mean, you are a living embodiment of somebody that is just dedicated to, you know, a cause that's greater than your own. So, so what's it like being a fireman out there?
You got to have this cool mustache.
Nice. Is
My
that
wife,
is that fireman issued?
that is fireman issue. After your first year, you can grow one out. So this is nice. Yeah, volunteer work. When you know what, I was lost when I got out of. I love tanks. It's so funny. Even Lieutenant Sippy was talking about it, right? He said it's a tanker move, right? It's a tanker mentality. You want to do your job and you want to be the best at it. I have my flight bag in the back over my shoulder here. And I remember a lieutenant said, "Hey, we could train monkeys to do a loader's job, you know." And I heard that, caught wind of it, and I was like, "Fuck this guy." Yeah, you know, I was like, "I'll show you what monkeys can do, right?" And you know, I shot 900s, 4 consecutive gunneries, and I wanted my tank crewmen to be that good, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when you think about, and you asked me that question, when I think about a Marine Corps tanker, that's what they are, man. They're driven, they're teammates, they're family. You may not like them, and people may not like me, but we're family. You know, we push through all the BS and we get the mission done.
That's great. I mean, let's continue in that vein for a second. Obviously, this channel has a message and has a reason. You know, and it's one that has taken personality, and hopefully it's one that's representing the community, and just you saying that alone, I think does, you know, and the leadership lessons, you know, what are they that you kind of have that you'd like to pass on from Freddie's seat to the Marines that are currently dealing with the divestment of armor?
Keep going, right? And it sounds so easy just to say keep going. Well, what does that truly mean? Reach out to someone if you need help. If you don't know, the transitioning assistant program, to me, is not up to par with what the outside community is asking of you, right? But keep going. You're going to get an entry-level position. Or, you know, if you transfer to another branch of service, you have to do your time in the dirt, but keep on going, because one day you're going to be there long enough to make a change. And that's what tankers do. You don't start off as the gunner and the tank commander. Hell, people out here in the civilian world, they only know 2 ranks. They know a captain and they know a sergeant. Right. When you talk to them about M1A1s, they know the driver and they know the driver. That's it. So keep going. You're going to get to that final destination. But when you find yourself hitting a bump in the road, you just got to keep on going.
No, that's great. Thank you. You know, and to the viewers, thank you for, you know, for continuing to kind of watch these you know, compelling stories and you know, the leadership lessons along the way. To those of you that are subscribed, thank you. To those of you who have not, please do so. The subscriptions are what empowers the channel. Hit the notification bell so you know kind of when you know when the new episodes come out. To you, Freddie, thank you. Absolutely appreciate your time. Appreciate you spending the time telling us these stories and passing on some knowledge. Obviously, you have a very unique military career, one to be very proud of. But even beyond that, you have a very, you know, like I said, a very proud way to honor your time in the Marine Corps by continuing to be a volunteer in your community. And I can't thank you enough for what you guys do. You and your brothers and sisters out there, you guys are awesome. What closing comments do you have?
The closing comments that I had, you know, I was thinking about, don't forget your family. And I say that if you served, you know, 20 plus years, or you're just hitting 4 years, don't forget your family. They've been there along the way with you, good, bad, or indifferent. They've stuck there. I remember my wife used to drop me off at the tank ramp in the morning and then wait for me to get out of formation an hour and a half late. So those things are important. Your kids, you know, especially with what's going on with tanks today, they want to know what that's like. What was that like? And sharing your experience with them helps carry on the tradition. And more than that, it allows you to share the stories of other tankers and humans that you worked with. So yeah, that would be my closing remarks.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Those are very powerful words and ones that we should all take heed. So, Freddie, thank you for your time. You made episode 10 very special, and be safe out there. And let me know if you need anything. Take care.
Perfect. Sounds good. Thank you.
Rah.